I've spent the better part of a decade working warehouse jobs. Factories, distribution centers, storage facilities. Places where the work is hard but honest. You clock in, you move boxes, you clock out. Simple. But when I saw the posting for a night supervisor position at an old industrial warehouse on the edge of town, something about it caught my attention. The pay was exceptional, nearly double what I'd been making. The shift was midnight to 8 a.m., and they made it clear the work was light. Just inventory checks and basic supervision. How bad could it be? I thought. I'd worked plenty of night shifts before. The quiet hours suited me. No management breathing down your neck. No crowds, just you and the work. I could already picture myself walking the aisles with a clipboard, maybe catching up on podcasts between rounds. I submitted my application on a Monday. By Tuesday afternoon, my phone was ringing. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman named Mrs. Chun, the operations manager. She asked if I could come in for an interview that same evening. The urgency surprised me, but I figured they must be desperate to fill the position. The warehouse was only 20 minutes from my apartment, so I agreed. When I arrived just before sunset, the building looked even more imposing than I'd expected. It was a massive concrete structure, at least 3 stories tall, with rows of small windows that reflected the dying light like dead eyes. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds, and only 2 other cars sat near the entrance. The whole place had an abandoned feel to it, like something left behind by a company that had moved on to bigger things. I pushed through the heavy metal door and found myself in a dimly lit reception area. Mrs. Chun appeared almost immediately, as if she'd been waiting right behind the door. She was a small woman in her 50s, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. The interview was brief, almost perfunctory. She asked about my experience, nodded along as I answered, but I got the sense she wasn't really listening. She needed someone, and I was there. The position requires attention to detail, she said, handing me a folder. You'll do hourly rounds through all 3 floors, checking the inventory logs and making sure everything is secure. We've had some issues with the previous supervisors. I waited for her to elaborate, but she didn't. Instead, she looked at me directly and asked, "Can you start tonight?" The question threw me. Most places wanted time for paperwork, background checks, training. But I wasn't about to turn down good money over a rushed timeline. "Sure," I said, trying to sound confident. Relief washed over her face. "Excellent. We're severely understaffed. The last 3 supervisors didn't work out." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "They found the work unsuitable." Something in the way she said it made my skin prickle, but I brushed it off. People quit jobs all the time. Maybe the isolation got to them or the hours messed with their sleep schedule. I wasn't going to let my imagination run wild before I'd even started. She handed me a key card and a flashlight, then walked me through the basic procedures one more time. Check the floors every hour. Note any discrepancies in the inventory system. Report anything unusual. Standard stuff. Before she left, she gave me one final instruction. Stay on the main pathways. Some sections of the building are old and unstable. We don't need any accidents. I nodded, and then I was alone. The warehouse was silent in a way that felt unnatural. Even the hum of machinery that you'd expect in a place like this was absent. I made my way to the supervisor's office on the first floor, a small glass-walled room that overlooked the main storage area. Inside were a desk, a computer showing camera feeds, a thermos of coffee someone had left behind, and a radio for emergencies. I sat down and scanned the monitors. The warehouse was organized into 3 floors, each one a labyrinth of tall metal shelving units stacked with boxes, crates, and industrial equipment. The camera angles were limited, showing only the main corridors and a few intersections. Large portions of the warehouse remained in shadow, beyond the reach of the cameras. After about 15 minutes of familiarizing myself with the layout, I noticed something sitting on the edge of the desk, a folded piece of paper with my name written on it in neat handwriting. I unfolded it, expecting maybe some additional instructions from Mrs. Chun, but it wasn't from her. Rules for the night supervisor. The heading made me pause. Below, it was a numbered list written in the same careful script. 1. Complete your rounds exactly on the hour. Never early, never late. 2. Do not enter the cold storage room on the second floor between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., even if you hear sounds coming from inside. 3. If you encounter a man in a gray maintenance uniform, do not engage in conversation. Nod and continue your round. 4. The elevator to the third floor will sometimes arrive already occupied. If the person inside asks you to join them, decline politely and take the stairs. 5. Do not investigate the sound of machinery running on the third floor. Check the cameras instead. 6. If you see a child anywhere in the warehouse, immediately return to the office and lock the door. Wait until your next scheduled round to leave. 7. The loading bay doors on the first floor must remain closed at all times. If you find them open, close them immediately and do not look outside. 8. Between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., remain in the office with the door locked. If someone knocks, check the cameras before responding. 9. If your radio starts transmitting voices speaking in reverse, turn it off and do not turn it back on until your next round. 10. Do not read the labels on the boxes in aisle 13 of the second floor. 11. If the temperature drops suddenly and you can see your breath, leave the area immediately. 12. You must not leave the warehouse before 8 a.m. If you do, something will follow you home. I read through the list twice, my heart beating a little faster with each rule. This had to be some kind of hazing ritual, right? A prank the previous workers played on new hires. But the handwriting was too careful, too serious. And the specificity of the rules, the times, the locations felt deliberate. I folded the paper and shoved it into my pocket. I wasn't gonna let some weird list psych me out on my first night. I had a job to do. At exactly midnight, I began my first round. The warehouse felt different now that I was walking through it. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered occasionally, casting dancing shadows between the shelving units. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor, each sound amplified in the vast empty space. The first floor was straightforward enough, mostly large equipment and pallets of supplies. I checked the inventory markers, noted everything on my tablet, and moved methodically through the designated pathways. Everything seemed normal, orderly, even. But as I approached the elevator to the second floor, I felt the first real twinge of unease. The elevator doors were old, scarred metal that looked like they'd been there since the building was constructed. I pressed the button and waited, listening to the mechanical whir as the car descended. When the doors opened, the elevator was empty. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the second floor, trying to ignore the way the fluorescent light inside flickered and buzzed. As the elevator lurched upward, I found myself thinking about Rule 4. The elevator will sometimes arrive already occupied. The doors opened on the second floor, and I stepped out into a corridor that felt noticeably colder than the first floor. The layout here was more complex, narrower aisles, higher shelves, and less lighting. I could see my assigned route on the tablet, a circuit through the main storage areas, avoiding the back sections that Mrs. Chun had warned me about. I was halfway through my round when I saw him. A man in a gray maintenance uniform stood at the far end of the aisle, his back to me. He was motionless, like he was examining something on one of the shelves. For a moment, I thought about calling out, introducing myself, but then I remembered Rule 3. I kept walking, my pace steady, my eyes forward. As I drew closer, I could see more details. The uniform was old-fashioned, the kind you might see in photographs from the 1970s. The fabric looked stiff, almost crispy, like it hadn't been washed in years. As I passed him, I gave a single nod, just as the rule instructed. The man didn't move, didn't turn his head, didn't acknowledge me at all. I forced myself to keep walking, to not look back, even though every instinct screamed at me to check if he was following. When I reached the end of the aisle and glanced back, he was gone. I completed the rest of the second floor without incident, though my nerves were frayed. When I returned to the office, I checked the cameras, scanning for any sign of the man in gray. Nothing. The corridors were empty, exactly as they should be. My second round at 1 a.m. was when things started to escalate. As I made my way through the first floor, I heard something that made me stop dead in my tracks. The sound of the loading bay doors opening. The metallic screech echoed through the warehouse, unmistakable and wrong. Rule 7 flashed in my mind. The loading bay doors must remain closed at all times. I hurried toward the loading bay, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. Sure enough, both massive doors were wide open, letting in the cold night air. Beyond them was only darkness, the kind of absolute black that seems to swallow light. I grabbed the chain to pull the doors closed, my hands working quickly. As I pulled, I made the mistake of glancing outside. There was something standing in the parking lot. A figure, tall and impossibly thin, silhouetted against the distant streetlights. It wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. I couldn't make out any features, but I could feel its attention locked on me like a physical weight. I yanked the chain harder, the doors grinding shut. The moment they closed, I secured the lock and backed away, my heart hammering. I didn't look at the windows, didn't try to see if the figure was still there. I just walked back to the office as quickly as I could without running. By the time I reached the safety of the glass-walled room, my hands were shaking. I checked the external cameras, but the loading bay angle showed only an empty parking lot. Whatever I'd seen or thought I'd seen was gone. The third round at 2 a.m. took me to the third floor for the first time. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have, the car groaning and shuddering as it climbed. When the doors finally opened, I was hit by a wave of stale air that smelled of rust and old wood. The third floor was different from the others. The shelving here was older, made of wood instead of metal, and the boxes stacked on them looked ancient, their labels faded and peeling. The lighting was worse too, with entire sections swallowed in shadow. I'd only made it 3 aisles into my route when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of machinery running. It was rhythmic, mechanical, like an old conveyor belt or printing press. The sound seemed to come from somewhere deeper in the floor, past the areas I was supposed to check. Rule 5 echoed in my head. Do not investigate the sound of machinery. I pulled out my tablet and switched to the camera view for the third floor. The angle that should have shown the source of the sound displayed only static. I tried cycling through other cameras, but several were offline, showing nothing but gray screen and white noise. The machinery sound grew louder, more insistent, and then I heard something else beneath it, voices. They were faint, almost drowned out by the mechanical noise, but they were definitely there. Multiple voices, talking over each other, too distorted to make out words. I didn't investigate. I turned around and completed my round using only the paths closest to the elevator, my pace quick and purposeful. The machinery sound followed me, seeming to move through the floor, always just out of sight. When I finally stepped back into the elevator, I pressed the button for the first floor repeatedly, desperate to get out of there. Back in the office, I collapsed into the chair and checked the time. 2:47 a.m., just over an hour until the lockdown period. Rule 8 was very specific. Between 3 and 4 a.m., I needed to stay in the office with the door locked. I used the remaining time to review the camera feeds, looking for any explanation for what I'd experienced. The footage showed empty corridors, orderly shelves, nothing out of place. But I noticed something odd. In several of the cameras, there were brief moments of interference, frames where the image seemed to glitch or distort. In one of those distorted frames, I thought I saw a small figure moving between the shelves on the second floor. A child. Rule 6 was clear. If you see a child, return to the office immediately and lock the door. But I was already in the office, and I'd only seen the figure on the camera, not in person. Did that count? I stared at the monitor, watching that particular feed intently, but the figure didn't reappear. At exactly 3 a.m., I locked the office door. The warehouse beyond the glass walls seemed to grow darker, as if the shadows were pressing closer. I turned on all the lights in the office and sat at the desk, trying to stay calm. For a while, nothing happened. The minutes ticked by slowly, each one feeling like an hour. I kept my eyes on the monitors, watching for any movement, any sign of what might be coming. At 3:23 a.m., the radio crackled to life. first, it was just static. Then, gradually, I began to hear voices. They were speaking words, but the words were backwards. Syllables reversed, sentences inverted. The effect was deeply unsettling, like listening to a recording played in reverse. Rule 9. If your radio transmits voices in reverse, turn it off. I reached for the radio, but before I could switch it off, the voices stopped. The static continued for a moment, then fell silent. In the sudden quiet, I heard something else. Footsteps outside the office. They were slow and deliberate, moving along the corridor that ran past the glass walls. I looked at the monitors, scanning for the source, but saw nothing. The footsteps grew closer, stopping just outside the office door. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps against the metal door. My blood ran cold. I checked the cameras frantically. The feed showing the area outside the office displayed an empty corridor. But the knocking continued, patient and persistent. "Hey, you in there?" A voice called out. It was male, friendly, with a slight echo. "I'm with maintenance. Got a report about some issues on the 3rd floor. Just need to check the logs real quick." I stared at the door, my mind racing. The cameras showed nothing. Rule 8 said to check the cameras before responding to any knock during this hour. The cameras showed no one. "Come on, buddy," the voice continued, taking on a slightly irritated edge. "I know you can hear me. Just open up for a second. It'll only take a minute." I didn't respond, didn't move. The knocking grew louder, more forceful, the door rattling in its frame. The voice began to change, the friendly tone slipping away to reveal something else underneath. Something cold and wrong. "Open the door." I squeezed my eyes shut, my hands gripping the edge of the desk. The pounding continued, violent now, like someone trying to break through. The glass walls shook, and I was certain they would shatter. And then, at exactly 4 a.m., it stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. I opened my eyes and checked the monitors. Still nothing. The corridor was empty, peaceful, as if nothing had happened. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the tablet. I had 4 more hours to go. The 4 a.m. round was the hardest yet. Every shadow seemed to hide something. Every sound made me jump. I moved through my route mechanically, checking items off the list without really processing what I was doing. My only goal was to survive until morning. On the 2nd floor, I made a wrong turn. In my exhausted, frazzled state, I took a corridor I'd been avoiding. One that led toward the back sections Mrs. Chun had warned me about. I realized my mistake when I found myself in an aisle I didn't recognize. The shelving units here coated in a thick layer of dust. And then I saw the label. Aisle 13. Rule 10. Do not read the labels on the boxes. But it was too late. My eyes had already started scanning the nearest boxes. The labels were written in that same careful handwriting as the rules, but the words made no sense. They weren't product descriptions or inventory codes. They were names. Human names, followed by dates. Michael Torres, August 15, 2019. Sarah Kim, March 22, 2020. David Walsh, November 7, 2021. Each box I looked at had a different name, a different date. And as I stood there, my flashlight shaking in my hand, I realized what the dates represented. They were all within the last 5 years. They were all recent. The temperature dropped suddenly. My breath became visible, forming clouds in the freezing air. Rule 11. If the temperature drops and you can see your breath, leave immediately. I didn't need to be told twice. I turned and ran, my feet pounding against the concrete, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The cold followed me, a wave of frigid air that seemed to pursue me through the corridors. I didn't stop until I was back in the elevator, the doors closing behind me. As the elevator descended, I felt something change. The air grew warmer, the oppressive weight lifting. By the time I reached the 1st floor, everything felt normal again. But I couldn't shake the image of those boxes, those names and dates. The previous supervisors who didn't work out, were their names in aisle 13? I didn't go back to the office. Couldn't. Instead, I stayed in the 1st floor break room, a small windowless space with a few chairs and a vending machine. I sat there with the door locked, watching the clock on my phone. counting down the minutes until 8 a.m. At 5 a.m., I heard it, a child's laughter. It was faint, coming from somewhere deeper in the first floor. The sound was innocent, playful, the kind of giggling you'd hear on a playground. But here, in this place, at this hour, it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever heard. Rule 6 said to lock myself in the office if I saw a child, but I'd already done that by staying in the break room. The laughter continued, growing closer. I could hear small footsteps now, the patter of little feet running through the aisles. The footsteps stopped outside the break room door. The door handle began to turn, slowly, testing to see if it was locked. I held my breath, my body frozen in terror. Through the gap at the bottom of the door, I could see shadows, small shadows, child-sized, moving back and forth. "Are you playing hide and seek?" a child's voice asked, muffled by the door. Sounded young, maybe 6 or 7 years old. "I can hear you breathing. I know you're in there." I didn't respond, couldn't respond. My throat felt sealed shut with fear. "That's okay," the voice continued, taking on a sing-song quality. "I like hide and seek. I'm really good at hiding. Would you like to see?" The shadows under the door moved, shifting and morphing into impossible shapes. The temperature in the break room began to drop, not as severe as on the second floor, but enough to make me shiver. 1. The voice began counting. 2. 3. I closed my eyes, my hands clamped over my ears, trying to block out the sound. The counting continued, each number drawn out and distorted, echoing in a way that made my head hurt. 8, 9, 10. Ready or not. At exactly 6 a.m., the voice stopped. The shadows disappeared. When I finally worked up the courage to open my eyes, pale morning light was beginning to filter through a gap in the door frame. Whatever had been outside was gone. I completed my final 2 rounds in a daze, moving through the warehouse like a ghost myself. The building felt different in the early morning light, still unsettling, but less overtly threatening. The shadows had retreated, the sounds had ceased, and for the first time all night, I felt like I could breathe. At exactly 8 a.m., Mrs. Chun arrived. She found me in the office, staring blankly at the monitors. I must have looked terrible because concern immediately crossed her face. "How was your first night?" she asked, though something in her tone suggested she already knew. I wanted to tell her everything. The man in gray, the figure outside the loading bay, the boxes with names, the child's voice. But when I opened my mouth, different words came out. "It was fine," I heard myself say. "Quiet." She nodded, looking relieved. "That's good. Very good. So you'll be back tonight." Tonight. The word hit me like a punch. I hadn't even thought about having to come back, to face another 12 hours in this place. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to quit, to walk away and never look back. But then I remembered Rule 12. You must not leave before 8 a.m. If you do, something will follow you home. I had stayed. I had made it through. But what about next time? What about the night after that? How many names were in aisle 13? How many supervisors had followed the rules and still ended up in those boxes? I started to say, but Mrs. Chun cut me off. "The pay is very good," she reminded me gently. "And you did well tonight, better than most. We need someone reliable, someone who can handle the unusual aspects of this position." Unusual aspects. That was one way to put it. I found myself nodding, agreeing to return, even as my mind screamed in protest. Mrs. Chun smiled, handed me a schedule for the rest of the week, and told me to get some rest. As I walked to my car in the morning light, I pulled out the list of rules one more time. In the daylight, they seemed almost absurd, like something from a horror story rather than a real job. But I knew the truth. I'd experienced it. I got in my car and started the engine, ready to drive home and try to sleep. But before I pulled out of the parking lot, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Sitting on my passenger seat, where nothing had been before, was a small cardboard box. It was old, dusty, identical to the ones I'd seen in aisle 13. With trembling hands, I picked it up and read the label written in that now familiar careful script. "Your name, December 18th, 2025. Today's date. I looked back at the warehouse, at its dark windows reflecting the morning sun. Mrs. Chun stood in one of the windows on the second floor, watching me. She raised her hand in a small wave. I put the box back on the seat, put the car in drive and headed home. Couldn't quit. The rules had been clear about that. Rule 12 meant I was stuck now, bound to this place until what? Until my box was full? Until I became another name on a dusty label? I don't know if I'll survive the next shift. I don't know if I survive this one. Not really. But I know one thing for certain. I'll be back tonight at midnight. The rules require it. And if you ever see a job posting for a night supervisor position with unusually good pay, do yourself a favor. Keep scrolling. Some places are looking for more than just workers. They're looking for something else entirely.
The Costume Party Massacre. I was 23 years old, attending what would become the most traumatic night of my life at my college roommate Tyler's Halloween bash. Tyler had rented this massive Victorian house on the edge of campus specifically for his legendary Halloween parties. Every October 31st, he transformed the place into something straight out of a nightmare. This particular year, he'd gone all out with animatronic zombies, fog machines pumping through every hallway, and walls draped in blood-stained sheets that hung like curtains of death. I'll keep this appropriate and skip past the usual college party activities, but around 1 a.m., things took a horrifying turn. Me, Tyler, and 3 of our closest friends, Marcus, Devin, and Chris, were in the upstairs study taking a break from the chaos below when we heard it. 3 thunderous bangs echoed through the house, cutting to the heavy bass of the music, like gunshots through silence. Tyler stumbled toward the door, his hand shaking as he reached for the knob. Before he could turn it, the screaming started. Not the playful Halloween screams we'd been hearing all night, but genuine terror. Blood-curdling shrieks of pure panic, rising from downstairs like a tidal wave of fear. We all shouted for Tyler to lock the door, our altered states suddenly crystal clear with adrenaline. He slammed it shut, turning the deadbolt with a click that felt like sealing a tomb. When he turned back to face us, his face had drained of all color. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated with shock. "There are men with guns," he whispered, his voice cracking. "They're wearing masks." We didn't need to be told twice. Tyler killed the lights and dove into the closet with Marcus. I squeezed under the antique desk with Chris, while Devin somehow contorted himself behind a bookshelf. The music downstairs cut out abruptly, replaced by a man's voice roaring commands we couldn't quite make out. Then came another bang. Then silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than any sound. Heavy boots climbed the stairs, each footstep a countdown to our potential deaths. They stopped right outside our door. The doorknob rattled violently. When it didn't give, the intruder threw his weight against the door. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th attempt, 2 shots rang out, splintering the doorknob into pieces. The door swung open with a haunting creak. Through the crack beneath the desk, I watched black tactical boots move deliberately across the hardwood floor. They went straight for the closet. The door flew open, and I heard Tyler's voice break as he begged for his life, offering everything he had. He admitted he was the one who organized the party, that his parents owned the house. The man ordered Tyler downstairs. Marcus stayed hidden in the back of the closet, somehow undetected. The boots left the room, taking Tyler with them. We stayed frozen in our hiding spots, barely breathing, for what felt like an eternity. Muffled voices drifted up from below, but we couldn't make out the words. 25 minutes later, we heard the front door slam. Tyler's footsteps pounded back up the stairs. "They're gone," he shouted. "They're gone." Walking back into that living room is something that will haunt me until my last breath. 2 bodies lay motionless on the blood-soaked carpet. Sarah and Brandon, 2 people I'd known since freshman year. 2 friends who'd never hurt anyone, shot execution style in the center of their foreheads. The image of their lifeless eyes staring at nothing will never leave me. The police came. Surprisingly, they didn't arrest anyone for the obvious drug use. They were too focused on finding the killers. Tyler later told us there had been 5 intruders, all wearing black suits, white guy fawkes masks, and leather gloves. They demanded $150,000 in cash. When Tyler couldn't produce it, they forced everyone to empty their pockets, their wallets, their jewelry into a duffel bag. They took phones, laptops, anything valuable. Tyler was never the same after that night. The guilt consumed him like a cancer. He started drinking heavily, missing classes, disappearing for days at a time. 6 months later, he dropped out completely. The last time I saw him, really saw him, he broke down crying in my apartment, telling me he couldn't escape the faces of Sarah and Brandon, that their deaths were his fault for throwing the party. Tyler died of an overdose in August 2014, just 10 months after the massacre. The killers were never caught. Sometimes I wonder if Tyler's death was accidental, or the weight of that Halloween night finally became too much to carry. Hashtag story 2, the bedroom intruder. It was my first Halloween living alone in a small 2-bedroom house I'd purchased with help from my parents in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. October 31st fell on a Saturday that year, and by 10:30 p.m., I figured the trick-or-treaters were done for the night. I was on my couch watching a Halloween movie marathon when I heard knocking at the front door. I glanced at the clock, 10:45 p.m., way too late for kids. I walked to the window and peeked through the curtain just in time to see a figure disappear from my porch. Ding-dong ditchers. Great. I settled back onto the couch, annoyed but not worried. Then it happened again. This time, I didn't even get up. Get lost. I yelled toward the door, hoping they'd hear me and move on to someone else's house. The knocking turned into pounding. Aggressive, angry pounding that made my windows rattle. My irritation turned to anger. I stormed the front door and yanked it open, ready to scare off whatever punk kids thought this was funny. No one was there. I slipped on my sneakers and went outside, checking behind bushes, around my car, across the street. Nothing. Not a single person in sight on the entire block. The neighborhood was dead silent. I went back inside, locked both deadbolts, and headed to my bedroom. I locked that door too, just in case. Even with my TV on, I could still hear the pounding at my front door continuing. It went on for over 40 minutes straight. I almost called the police, but I didn't want to deal with the retaliation. Egged house, slashed tires, the usual teenage revenge tactics. Eventually, I fell asleep with the TV on. I woke up to knocking. The clock read 2:47 a.m. My heart dropped into my stomach when I realized the knocking wasn't coming from the front door. It was coming from my bedroom door, from inside my house. I shot up in bed, my eyes scanning the room for anything I could use as a weapon. They knew I was awake now. The doorknob started turning, twisting back and forth as whoever was on the other side tried to get in. Then they started throwing their weight against the door, trying to break through. In a moment of desperate inspiration, I grabbed my phone, opened YouTube, and searched for gunshot sound effects. I connected it to my Bluetooth speaker, cranked the volume to maximum, and pressed play. Bang. The gunshot sound exploded through my bedroom. So realistic it made my ears ring. That was a warning shot. I screamed, "Leave now, or I'll put a bullet in your skull." Silence. Then footsteps. 2 sets of footsteps running through my house, followed by the sound of my front door slamming open. I waited 5 full minutes before opening my bedroom door. The house was empty, but my front door was wide open, swinging slightly in the night breeze. I slammed it shut, triple-checked every lock, and called the police. They found fresh pry marks on my back door and disturbed dirt beneath my bedroom window, where someone had been standing, watching. 2 sets of footprints led away from my house toward the woods behind my neighborhood. I moved out 3 weeks later. I couldn't sleep in that house anymore, knowing strangers had been inside, standing outside my bedroom door at 3 a.m. The police never found out who they were or what they wanted. Sometimes not knowing is the most terrifying part. Hashtag story 3, the Halloween caller. I was 15 years old and home alone on Halloween night, handing out candy to trick-or-treaters while my mom took my younger brother Ethan out. He was 9 and still obsessed with Halloween, so Mom said they'd be out until at least 9:30 p.m. I was actually excited to be home. I'd set myself up on the couch with horror movies, a huge bowl of candy for me and the kids, and orders to keep the porch light on. My best friend Jake had plans with his family, so this was my night to relax and enjoy the spooky atmosphere. Around 7:45 p.m., the house phone rang. We still had a landline back then, and the ringer was set so loud it made me jump every time. I picked up. Hello. Silence. Just some rustling sounds, like someone was holding the phone, but not talking. I could hear breathing. Hello. I said again. Nothing. They hung up. I figured it was just a prank call. It was Halloween after all. Kids pulling stupid jokes. I went back to my movie and handed out candy to a few more groups of trick-or-treaters. The phone rang again 15 minutes later. Same unknown number on the caller ID. This time I decided to play along. Hello. Again, just breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. Real funny, Jake. I know it's you. I try to sound confident, like I'd figured out his prank. They hung up. Now I was genuinely uncomfortable. The house felt bigger, emptier. The spaces between trick-or-treaters were getting longer as it got later. I was watching Friday the 13th when the phone rang a third time. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me grab it. Hello? Breathing. Fumbling. Silence that stretched for 30 seconds. Then, in a voice that was definitely not Jake's, a deep, distorted, almost mechanical voice, they spoke. I'll be paying you a visit tonight. I slammed the phone down, my hand shaking. Screw this, I said out loud to no one. I sat back down, promising myself I wouldn't answer again. But the call had rattled me. Every shadow looked darker. Every creak of the house settling sounded like footsteps. About 45 minutes later, all the lights went out. Every single one. The TV died. The house was plunged into complete darkness. I stood up, frozen in the middle of the living room, when violent pounding erupted at the front door. Bang, 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 bang. I screamed. I couldn't help it. Then I heard laughter from outside. Familiar laughter. I ran to the door and yanked it open. Jake was standing there, doubled over laughing, holding his phone up with a flashlight. You asshole! I shoved him. That was you calling? He nodded, still cracking up. Dude, you should have heard yourself scream. Do the voice, I demanded. Do that voice you did on the phone. His smile faded. What voice? I didn't say anything. I just called and did the breathing thing. My stomach dropped. Jake. Someone called and said they were going to visit me tonight. That wasn't me, man. I just called twice and breathed into the phone. I didn't say a word. We looked at each other, the realization hitting us both at the same time. I grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the side of the house where the electrical box was located. The metal panel was hanging open, and every single wire had been cut clean, deliberate cuts with wire cutters. We ran back inside, and I called my mom. She told us to lock every door and window and wait for police, who she'd call immediately. The police traced the final call to a payphone outside a bar 3 miles from my house. Someone had been calling me, threatening me, while Jake was coincidentally pulling a prank. The police asked if I'd had any conflicts with anyone, if there was someone who might want to scare me. I couldn't think of anyone. They increased patrols in our neighborhood for next week, but nothing else happened. I've spent years wondering if it was just an extreme prank that went too far, or if someone really had planned a break-in that night, and Jake's arrival scared them off. The timing was too perfect. If Jake hadn't shown up exactly when he did, would someone have been waiting in that dark house for me? I still don't know. And honestly, I don't want to find out. Hashtag Story4, the mass follower. When I was 12, my friends and I went trick-or-treating in our neighborhood like we did every year. We had our route planned out. The houses that gave full-size candy bars, the ones that had the best decorations, the usual spots. We were about an hour into the night when we passed a man standing completely still on someone's lawn. He was wearing a white porcelain mask with no expression, just blank features, and holding an old-fashioned lantern that flickered with real flame. He was dressed in a long black coat that went down to his ankles. As we walked past him, his entire body rotated to follow us. Not just his head, his whole body, like a statue being turned on a platform. His eyes behind that mask locked onto us and didn't look away. We laughed it off nervously and kept walking to the next house. When we turned around after getting our candy, he was gone from that lawn, but we saw him again, and again, and again, every street we turned down. He was there somewhere, standing under a tree, on a porch, beside a parked car, always perfectly still until we passed, then turned to watch us leave. He never got closer, but he never fell behind either. We started walking faster. He kept pace. How is he keeping up with us? My friend Danny whispered. We're practically running. At one house. We didn't see him anywhere. We thought maybe he'd finally gone home, that the joke was over. We got our candy and turned back toward the street. He was standing in the middle of the road, directly in our path, that lantern swinging slightly in his hand. We immediately ran back to the door and knocked frantically. The woman who answered looked concerned as we pointed at the man in the street. She yelled at him to leave, or she'd call the police. He didn't move. He just stood there, watching us from behind that expressionless white mask. The woman pulled out her phone and started dialing. Only then did he turn and walk away, disappearing around the corner. We were too scared to keep trick-or-treating, so we called my dad to pick us up. While we waited, another pair we knew came up to us and asked if we'd seen that creepy guy in the mask. He said he'd spotted the masked man hiding behind a tree, waving at little kids who were by themselves, trying to get them to come closer. He'd chased the guy off by threatening to call the police. That's when we realized this wasn't just someone committed to a scary costume. This was someone targeting children. My dad filed a police report when he picked us up. Other parents did the same. The police increased patrols that night, but they never found him. No one in our neighborhood knew who he was or where he came from. For years after, I'd have nightmares about that blank white mask turning to follow me, about that silent figure appearing on every street no matter how fast I ran. Hashtag Story 5, the Black Jeep. I was trick-or-treating with my best friend Morgan when we were both 12 years old. We've been friends since kindergarten and had our Halloween routine down to a science. Our neighborhood had a small wooden footbridge that crossed over a creek called Willow Run, and it was the quickest way to get to the houses on the other side where the rich families lived, the ones who gave out the best candy. We were halfway across the bridge when a black Jeep pulled up on the opposite end, completely blocking our path. The windows were tinted so dark we couldn't see inside. We stopped walking. Something felt wrong immediately. We turned around and started heading back the way we came, walking quickly but trying not to run. Behind us, we heard the Jeep's windows rolling down. A man's voice called out to us, rough and raspy like he'd smoked cigarettes his whole life. Girls. Hey girls, come here. I need help. We didn't stop. We'd both been taught about stranger danger since we were little. I'm lost, he yelled. I just need directions. Please. I yelled back, sorry, without turning around, and we started walking faster. The Jeep couldn't fit on the narrow footbridge, so we thought we were safe. We heard it pull away, tires squealing as it drove off down the road on the other side of the creek. We let out a breath of relief and kept walking. We were almost at the end of the bridge when we heard an engine roaring. The black Jeep came flying around the corner onto our side of the creek, tires screeching as it slammed to a stop directly in front of us. The doors flew open. 3 men got out. The driver was younger, maybe late 20s, with a buzz cut and a face tattoo. The other 2 were older, one with curly gray hair and a thick mustache, the other completely bald with a scar running down his cheek. The old guy with the mustache smiled at us, revealing yellow teeth. Get in the car, girls. We got bags of full-size candy bars. The good stuff, Snickers, Reese's, all of it. We stood frozen for a second. Then Morgan grabbed my hand and we ran. We dropped our candy bags and ran as fast as our legs would carry us toward my house, which was now visible at the end of the street. Behind us, we heard the men shouting and their footsteps pounding the pavement. They were chasing us. I've never been more grateful that my house was close. We could see my porch light. We could see my dad's car in the driveway. We were almost there. We hit my porch and rang the doorbell over and over, screaming for someone to open the door. I looked back and saw the two older men had stopped halfway down the street, too out of breath to keep running. The younger guy was back at the Jeep, which was now backing up and turning around. My mom threw the door open, took one look at our faces and the men in the street, and yanked us inside. She locked the door and immediately called 911. The police arrived within 10 minutes. My mom described everything. The black Jeep, the three men, their attempts to lure us into their vehicle. The officer said they'd been getting reports all night about a black Jeep following kids around the neighborhood. They asked if the men knew where we lived now. My mom's face went pale. "Yes," she whispered. "They watched the girls run to this house." The police agreed to park an unmarked car in front of our house for the rest of the night. My mom was a mess, pacing the house, checking locks, looking out windows every few minutes. My dad tried to calm her down, but none of us could really relax. Around 2 a.m., we were all woken up by flashing red and blue lights outside. My dad went to the window and called us over. The unmarked police car had pulled over a black Jeep right in front of our house. 3 men were in handcuffs on the sidewalk. My dad went outside to talk to the officers. Me and Morgan crept to the doorway to watch. When the men looked up and saw us, we both flipped them off. My mom pulled us back inside and sent us to bed, but we were both grinning. They'd come back. They'd actually driven back to our street at 2 a.m., and the police were waiting for them. We found out later they had a history of child abduction attempts in 3 different cities. Our testimony helped put them away. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if we'd gotten in that car, if we believed their lies about Candy. I think about the kids who maybe weren't as lucky as we were. Hashtag story 6, the closet. This happened when my daughter Emma was 8 years old. I'd taken her trick-or-treating for about 3 hours, and by the time we got home, we were both exhausted. I made us some dinner. We watched a Halloween movie together, and around 10 p.m. I sent her to bed. I was tired too, so I brushed my teeth and climbed into bed, maybe 20 minutes after her. I was just starting to drift off when my door opened. Emma stood in the doorway, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. "Mom, there's someone in my closet." I sighed, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. Every parent knows this routine. The monsters on the bed, the things in the closet. "Honey, there's no one in your closet. It's just your imagination." "But I heard them moving around," she insisted. "You can sleep with me if you're scared." She shook her head. "Can you just come check?" I told her to go back to bed and that everything would be fine. She left reluctantly, and I felt guilty, but I was just so tired. Halloween had been a long day. 5 minutes later, she was back. This time I sat up. "Emma, why do you think someone's in your closet?" I heard someone moving things around, and something fell over. The way she said it made something cold run down my spine. She wasn't crying or whining. She was serious, almost calm, like she was just stating a fact. I got out of bed and walked her back to her room. I flipped on the light. "Is anybody in there?" I called out in a joking voice, trying to lighten the mood. We stood there listening. I expected silence. I expected to show Emma there was nothing to worry about. Then we heard it, a definite thud from inside her closet. Something, or someone, had knocked something over. "Emma, run to the neighbors," I said, my voice shaking. "Tell them to call 911. Right now. Go!" She took off running. I heard the front door slam behind her. I took a breath, grabbed a baseball bat from the hallway closet, and walked back to Emma's room. I stood in front of her closet door for what felt like an eternity. Then I yanked it open. Karen's eyes went wide when she saw me dragging her son. I shoved Tyler through the doorway and explained everything to his dad, Mike, who'd appeared from the living room. Mike's face went from confused to horrified to absolutely furious in about 3 seconds. He asked me if I was going to press charges. "Not if this never happens again," I said. "But if I ever catch him near my daughter again, you'll all be sorry." Mike slapped Tyler across the face hard, right there in front of all of us. Then he asked me and Emma to come inside, so Tyler could explain himself. The neighbor's son, Tyler, was sitting on top of Emma's toy box. squeezed into the corner of the closet. He was 16 years old and had no business being in my house, let alone hiding in my daughter's closet. I lost it. I grabbed him by his shirt collar and dragged him out of the closet, out of the room, and out of my house. I marched him directly to his parents' front door next door, where Emma was standing with Tyler's mom, Karen. Apparently, Tyler hadn't been alone. While I'd been out trick-or-treating with Emma, Tyler and his friend Austin had snuck into our house through a window I'd left cracked in the kitchen. They'd hidden in Emma's closet, planning to scare her. Where's Austin? I demanded. Tyler said he was probably still in the house. I told Emma to stay with Mike and Karen while I ran back home. I burst to the front door, and there he was, Austin, standing in my living room, holding a pair of Emma's underwear in his hands. I've never felt rage like that in my entire life. I grabbed him by the throat and threw him to the ground. I slapped him 4 times across the face before I let him get up and run out of my house. The only reason I didn't call the police was because Mike was a good friend and I knew he'd handle Tyler. But I made it absolutely clear that if those boys ever so much as looked at my daughter again, there would be consequences. Emma slept in my bed that night. She was traumatized, and honestly, so was I. A 16-year-old boy had been hiding in my 8-year-old daughter's closet, playing with her underwear. The next morning, I found a small hole drilled in Emma's closet door. Those sick bastards had been watching her sleep, spying on her getting dressed. Emma's 14 now. Tyler went away to college last year. Nothing's happened since that night, and sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing by not involving the police. But he was just a kid, and Mike dealt with it seriously. I still think about it, though. I still wonder what could have happened if Emma hadn't heard them, if she'd just fallen asleep like usual. Some nights, I lie awake thinking about that drill hole in the closet door, about what they might have seen, about what they might have been planning to do, and I wonder if letting them go was mercy or a mistake. Hashtag story 7. The figure. We just moved into a large old house in a subdivision outside Toronto. It was Halloween night, and instead of trick-or-treating, my whole family, my parents, my 4 siblings, and me, were unpacking boxes and getting settled into our new bedrooms. It was late, past 11:30 p.m., when my mom finally released us from unpacking duty. I was 13 and exhausted, so I headed straight to my bedroom on the 2nd floor. I just wanted to sleep. About 20 minutes later, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. Heavy, deliberate footsteps walking back and forth. Thinking it was my younger brother trying to annoy me, I got up to yell at him to go to bed. I opened my door and looked out into the hallway. No one was there. The hallway was empty. All the other bedroom doors were closed, and the lights were off except for the small nightlight plugged in near the bathroom. I stood there for a moment listening, but there was nothing but silence. I went downstairs to the basement where my parents and siblings were still working. Was someone just upstairs? I asked. They all said no. They'd all been down there together for the past hour. A chill ran through me, but I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Moving into a new house, being overtired, the creaky old floors, it all made sense. I went back to my room and tried to put it out of my mind. My room was freezing. I'd left it warm when I went downstairs, but now it felt like I'd left a window open in the middle of winter. I had to put on a hoodie and wrap myself in an extra blanket just to stop shivering. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because I woke up suddenly at 12:47 a.m. The house was completely quiet now. Everyone had gone to bed. Then I heard it again, footsteps in the hallway. But not just walking. They were right outside my door, pacing back and forth, back and forth. I sat up in bed, holding my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped. For maybe 30 seconds, there was complete silence. Then someone started pounding on my parents' bedroom door across the hall. Loud, aggressive pounding that echoed through the entire 2nd floor. Bang, 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 bang. I wanted to scream for my parents, but I was paralyzed with fear. The pounding went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes. Then it stopped. I thought maybe my parents would come out to see what was happening, but their door stayed closed. The house fell silent again. That's when my bedroom door started to creak open, slowly, like someone was pushing it open with one finger. It was too dark to see who or what was opening my door. I could barely make out the doorway. Just a faint light from the hallway nightlight, creating a dim glow. "Hey," I said, my voice cracking. "What are you doing?" "Who is it?" No answer. Just soft footsteps enter my room, moving closer to my bed. "Let me sleep," I said, try to sound annoyed instead of terrified. "Whoever this is, stop." The footsteps kept coming. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. I rolled onto my side, facing away from the door, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. The footsteps stopped right next to my bed. I couldn't help it. I had to look. I turned my head. A figure was standing beside my bed. Tall, at least 7 feet tall, completely black against the darkness of the room. Not like a shadow, but like a solid black shape, a silhouette of a person that was somehow darker than the darkness around it. It leaned down toward me. "Boo!" it whispered. I screamed louder than I've ever screamed in my life. I screamed until my throat hurt, until I couldn't breathe. The lights in the hallway flipped on. My door burst open, and my parents rushed in, my dad nearly falling over himself to hit my light switch. The room flooded with light. There was nothing there. No figure. No person. My room was completely empty, except for me, still screaming. My siblings now crowded in the doorway, staring at me like I'd lost my mind. There was someone here. I sobbed. Right next to my bed. They said, "Boo!" My mom rushed over and held me while my dad checked my closet, under my bed, behind my furniture. Nothing. "Did you hear the banging on your door?" I asked him frantically. "Someone was pounding on your door for like 5 minutes. My parents looked at each other, confused. "We didn't hear any knocking," my mom said softly. "We were both asleep until we heard you screaming." My siblings all confirmed they hadn't heard anything either. No footsteps. No pounding. Nothing. They all looked at me like I was crazy. Like I'd had a nightmare and couldn't tell the difference between dreams and reality. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. You can't imagine something that real, that specific. The footsteps, the pounding, the cold, the figure, the whispered boo right next to my ear. I slept in my parents' room for the next 2 weeks. I was 13 years old, and I didn't care if my siblings made fun of me. I couldn't go back into that room alone. We lived in that house for 3 more years before moving again. I never felt comfortable there. Sometimes I'd still hear the footsteps, still feel the cold spots, still sense something watching me from a hallway. My parents said it was just an old house settling, that the sounds were normal for a place that old. But I know what happened that Halloween night. Something was in that house with us. And whatever it was, it wanted me to know it was there. Hashtag story 8, the scare house. This happened 4 years ago when my friends and I were all 21. We'd reached that perfect age where haunted house attractions are genuinely fun without being too scary. Or so we thought. We bought tickets to an attraction called The Descent, Journey into Darkness. It was a local haunted house that had been operating for 4 consecutive years and had built a reputation as one of the most intense experiences in the state. We'd all heard amazing things about it. This particular year would be its final season. After Halloween 2014, it shut down permanently. After what happened to us, I understand why. The Descent wasn't a guided tour like most haunted houses. Instead, they gave you a simple mission. Find your way through the house, make it to the basement, locate one of the hidden keys, then find the exit door, and use your key to get out. It was basically a horror-themed escape room before those became popular. We started in an elaborate Victorian-style parlor. The attention to detail was incredible. A full-size coffin in the center of the room stood open and empty. Thick artificial spiderwebs covered every corner. Antique furniture was strategically placed throughout, and realistic blood stains marked the weathered wooden floorboards. The next room was a dining room, and that's where the lighting changed dramatically. From that point forward, every room was lit only by old-fashioned lanterns mounted on the walls, casting flickering shadows that moved and danced in ways that made your eyes play tricks on you. The scare started in the third room. Actors in genuinely terrifying costumes would burst out from hidden panels in the walls, their makeup and masks so realistic It was hard to believe they were just people. They got me every single time, even though I knew to expect them. The house was designed like a maze, narrow corridors, rooms that loop back on themselves, fake doors that open into walls, real doors hidden behind curtains. We spent probably 30 minutes just trying to find a basement entrance. When we finally found a door marked cellar, I have to admit I felt a spike of anxiety. None of us wanted to go down there. The staircase descended into complete and total darkness. Not dim lighting, not shadowy corners, actual pitch black void. We started to wonder if we'd accidentally found a staff-only area, someplace guests weren't supposed to go. But the rules have been clear. Find the basement, find a key, find the exit. This is so fucked up, my friend Rachel said, laughing nervously. We had no choice. If we wanted out, we had to go down. Each wooden step creaked under our weight, the sound echoing in the darkness below like something out of a nightmare. We were all laughing and cursing, trying to lighten the mood, but I could hear the genuine fear in everyone's voices. The basement was massive. I couldn't see the walls or the ceiling, just endless black in every direction. I kept my hands stretched out in front of me, shuffling forward carefully, terrified I'd walk straight into a wall or fall into something.